Welcome to her journey, beautiful souls. Before we dive into this absolutely devastating story of betrayal and the most satisfying revenge you've ever heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you're going to want to follow every twist and turn of what happens next. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. This story is going to shake you to your core. They say you never truly know someone until you see them at their worst. But what happens when that worst moment reveals that the people you loved most in this world are complete strangers? What happens when the children you raised, sacrificed for, and would have died for decide that your life has no value the moment you become inconvenient? I found out the answer to that question on a remote country road in Pennsylvania, standing in gravel and dust, watching my own daughter drive away and leave me to die. My name is Margaret Tim, and I'm 67 years old. 3 weeks ago, I was Margaret Harrison, devoted wife of 42 years to Jonathan Harrison, co-owner of Harrison Family Vineyards, and mother to 2 children I thought I knew. Today, I'm something else entirely. I'm a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. But let me start at the beginning, because you need to understand how deep this betrayal goes. You need to understand what kind of monsters can smile at their father's funeral while planning their mother's destruction. It was Tuesday, April 15th, when my world ended the first time. I was in our kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals for my family, where I'd bandaged scraped knees and helped with homework, where I'd held my husband's hand through his final weeks of agony. The morning sun was streaming through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits, and I was trying to pretend that life could somehow continue without Jonathan. The phone rang.
Dr.
Martinez, Jonathan's oncologist, with a call I'd been dreading but somehow hoping would never come. Mrs. Harrison, I'm so sorry. Jonathan passed peacefully in his sleep about an hour ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though we'd known this day was coming, even though I'd spent the last 3 months watching pancreatic cancer slowly steal the man I'd loved since I was 19 years old, I wasn't prepared for the finality of it. I called Hunter first. My 35-year-old son, the golden boy who'd graduated from Wharton and now worked for some high-powered investment firm in New York. The son who'd visited his dying father exactly 3 times in the past year, each visit lasting less than 48 hours because he was too busy with work. Hunter, honey, I need to tell you something. Your father. Mom, I'm in a meeting. Can this wait?
No, sweetheart.
Your father died this morning. Silence. Then, oh, well, we knew this was coming. I'll have my assistant look into flights. I assume you'll want to do the funeral quickly?
No tears. No emotion.
Just logistics. Like his father was a client who defaulted on a loan rather than the man who'd taught him to ride a bike, who'd paid for his education, who'd built the business that would have been his inheritance. The call to Jade, my 32-year-old daughter, went similarly. She was in Los Angeles, pursuing her latest passion project, a wellness retreat for burned-out celebrities that Jonathan had funded with $200,000 from our savings. Money we'd never seen again. Oh my God, Mom, she said when I told her. This is terrible timing. I'm launching next month, and I've got investors flying in from Dubai. Can we maybe do a memorial service later? Something small? Her father was dead, and she was worried about timing, but I told myself they were in shock. I told myself they were processing grief differently. I told myself they were still my babies, just grown up and dealing with adult pressures I didn't understand. I was wrong about everything. The funeral was 4 days later. I'd arranged everything myself, the flowers, the music, the reception at our house afterward. Hunter arrived the night before, staying at a hotel rather than his childhood home, because the house feels too sad. Jade flew in that morning, bringing 3 suitcases for a 2-day visit and complaints about the tragic Wi-Fi situation at our house. Jonathan was buried on a hillside overlooking the vineyards he'd built from nothing. 40 years of backbreaking work, of 16-hour days during harvest season, of studying every aspect of viticulture until he'd become one of the most respected winemakers in the region. The cemetery was full of people whose lives he'd touched: employees, competitors, friends, neighbors. Everyone except the two people who should have mattered most. Hunter spent the service checking his phone. Jade live-streamed parts of it for her social media, talking about honoring my father's legacy while posing dramatically by his casket. I stood between them, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. After the reception, when the last guest had left and the house fell silent, I suggested we spend the evening going through some of Jonathan's things together. Maybe sharing memories, maybe finding comfort in each other's company. Actually, Mom, Hunter said, loosening his tie, Jade and I need to talk to you about something important. They made me sit at our dining room table like I was about to be fired from my own life. Hunter pulled out a leather portfolio, the kind he probably used to intimidate clients, and Jade positioned herself slightly behind him, letting her older brother take the lead the way she always had when they were in trouble as children. Mom, we've been talking, and we're concerned about your future, Hunter began, his voice taking on that professional tone he developed somewhere between college and becoming a stranger. Dad's death is going to create some challenges, and we want to make sure you're taken care of. What kind of challenges? Financial ones, Jade said, finally looking up from her phone. The vineyard is a business, Mom. It needs to be run by people who understand business. You're not getting any younger. I stared at my daughter, this woman who'd never worked a day in her life, who'd burned through more money in failed ventures than most people see in a lifetime, and she was questioning my ability to run the business I'd helped build. I've been managing the books and operations for 20 years, I said slowly. Since your father's first heart attack. Mom, be realistic, Hunter said, sliding a document across the table. The industry is changing. You need someone with modern business experience. Someone who understands market trends and profit optimization. I looked at the paper. It was a proposal to sell Harrison Family Vineyards to a corporate buyer for $4.2 million. The vineyard Jonathan had sworn would stay in our family forever, would be passed down to his grandchildren, was being sold to the highest bidder before his body was cold in the ground. We can't sell, I said. This was your father's life's work. He wanted it to stay in the family. Dad was sentimental, Jade said with a shrug. But sentiment doesn't pay bills. Do you know how much money we could make from this sale? We could all start fresh. I don't want to start fresh. I want to honor your father's wishes. Hunter's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something cold and calculating in his eyes. Mom, the vineyard is in Dad's name. He left it to Jade and me in his will. We're offering to split the proceeds with you. That's more than generous. Split the proceeds. I felt dizzy. Hunter, this is my home. These are my life's work too. And you'll be compensated for that, he said smoothly. We've already looked into some wonderful assisted living facilities. There's one in Harrisburg that specializes in wine country widows. Very upscale. You'd love it. Wine country widows. Like I was some generic type of woman rather than the person who'd raised them, who'd sacrifice my own dreams so they could chase theirs. I'm not going anywhere, I said, standing up. And I'm not selling the vineyard. You can't make me. That's when Jade's mask slipped too. Actually, Mom, we can. Hunter checked with a lawyer. Dad's will is very clear. The business goes to his children. The house is part of the business property. You don't have any legal claim to any of it. I looked at my children, really looked at them, and saw strangers. Strangers who'd calculated the value of my life down to the penny and found it wanting. I need to see the will, I said quietly. Hunter slid another document across the table. Of course. We want to be transparent about everything. I read through the legal language, my hands shaking with rage rather than grief. The will was dated 6 months ago, during the worst period of Jonathan's illness, when he was on heavy pain medications and barely conscious most days. The signature looked like his, but something about it felt wrong. Too steady, too controlled for a man whose hands had been shaking for months, but whether it was forged or coerced, the result was the same. My children owned everything, and I owned nothing. I need time to think, I said, folding the will and handing it back to Hunter.
Of course, Mom.
Take all the time you need. Just remember, the buyer wants to close quickly. The offer expires in 2 weeks. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked through our house, touching every surface, remembering every moment Jonathan and I had shared within these walls. The kitchen where we'd danced to jazz music after too much wine. The living room where we'd watched our children take their first steps. The bedroom where we'd made love, fought, made up, and dreamed about our future together, a future that apparently didn't include me. I was still awake at dawn when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Hunter appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in his traveling clothes. I've got to head back to New York, he said, not meeting my eyes. Big presentation on Monday. But we should have an answer about the vineyard by Friday, okay? Friday. The offer expires Friday, Mom. We need to know what you've decided. What I'd decided. As if I had any choice in the matter. As if they hadn't already made their decision and were just waiting for me to accept it. After Hunter left, Jade emerged from her room with 3 suitcases and a taxi waiting outside. I've got to get back to LA, she said, kissing my cheek with lips that felt cold as marble. The Dubai investors are coming in Monday, and I can't afford to miss this opportunity. Jade, wait. Can we talk about this? About the vineyard? About what your father would have wanted? Mom, Daddy's gone. We have to think about the living now. And the living need money to survive. She climbed into the taxi without looking back, leaving me standing in the driveway of the home that was apparently no longer mine, watching another piece of my life disappear into the distance. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Because I had something my children didn't know about. Something Jonathan had given me years ago, when we first started the vineyard, and he was worried about protecting me if anything happened to him. I had a secret. And that secret was about to destroy everything they thought they knew about their inheritance. The morning after my children abandoned me to deal with their father's death alone, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to work. Not because I had to, but because I needed to remember who I was before I became just mom to 2 ungrateful strangers. I needed to remember that I was Margaret Tim, co-founder of Harrison Family Vineyards, the woman who'd managed the business operations while Jonathan focused on the winemaking. The vineyard was quiet at 7 a.m., just me and the morning mist rising from the vines. I let myself into the office, a converted barn where we'd handled the business side of things for 20 years, and sat at the desk where I'd spent countless hours managing inventory, coordinating with distributors, balancing books, and building relationships with clients. Hunter thought I was just Jonathan's wife, a woman who'd played at business while her husband did the real work. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I pulled out the hidden filing cabinet behind the wine storage, the one Jonathan had insisted on installing just in case. Inside were the documents he'd told me about years ago, the ones I'd never needed to access until now. The first folder contained the original incorporation papers for Harrison Family Vineyards. The business had been incorporated in 1981, the year after Jonathan and I married. But unlike the will Hunter had shown me, these documents told a different story. The vineyard wasn't just Jonathan's business. It was registered as a partnership between Jonathan Harrison and Margaret Tim. I'd kept my maiden name for business purposes at my father's suggestion. He'd been a lawyer, and he told me that having separate identities for business and personal life could be useful someday. At 25, I'd thought he was being overly cautious. At 67, I realized he'd been brilliant, The second folder contained something even more interesting, a life insurance policy I'd forgotten about. A $2 million policy on Jonathan's life, with me as the sole beneficiary. Hunter and Jade had been so focused on the vineyard and the property that they'd never bothered to ask about insurance, but the third folder contained the nuclear weapon I'd need to destroy their plans. It was a secondary will, dated just 2 weeks ago, during one of Jonathan's lucid periods. A will that had been witnessed by our family lawyer, Thomas Mitchell, and our longtime family friend, Dr. Sarah Chin. This will told a very different story about Jonathan's final wishes. I drove to Thomas Mitchell's office in town, the same man who'd handled our legal affairs for 15 years. Thomas was in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen too many family disputes over the years. "Margaret," he said, rising from his desk when his secretary showed me in. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Jonathan was a good man." "Thank you, Thomas. I need to ask you about something. My children showed me a will that I have questions about." Thomas's expression darkened. "I was wondering when you'd come to see me. I've been trying to reach you since the funeral."
Why?
"Because the will your son presented to me for probate isn't the will Jonathan signed in my office 2 weeks before his death." I felt my heart start racing. "What do you mean?" Thomas opened a file cabinet and withdrew a thick folder. "Jonathan came to see me in March, during one of his better days. He was very clear about what he wanted to do. He'd been thinking about his legacy, about what would happen to you and the vineyard after he was gone. He handed me a copy of the real will. As I read through it, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. According to Jonathan's actual will, the vineyard was to be held in trust, with me as the primary beneficiary and manager for my lifetime. Hunter and Jade would inherit equal shares, but only after my death, and only if they met certain conditions, including completing a full year of work at the vineyard to understand the business. Most importantly, the will stipulated that the vineyard could never be sold to outside buyers. It was to remain in the family forever, exactly as Jonathan had always promised. "Thomas, why didn't you present this will for probate?" "Because your son presented what he claimed was a more recent will, dated 2 weeks later. When I examined it, I had concerns about its authenticity, but I needed to investigate further before making any accusations." "And what did you find?" Thomas leaned back in his chair. "I found that Jonathan was heavily sedated during the week that will was supposedly signed. I also found that the signature was inconsistent with other documents he'd signed during his illness. And most tellingly, I found that the witnesses listed on the document were never actually present at your house on the date indicated." "So, it's a forgery?" "I believe so. But proving it will require a formal challenge, which means going to court. It means fighting your own children." I thought about Hunter's cold calculation, about Jade's casual dismissal of her father's wishes, about being abandoned on my own after the funeral while they planned to sell my life's work. "Thomas, I want to fight this. I want to fight them." "Are you sure? This could get ugly, Margaret." "Family disputes always do. They stopped being my family the moment they decided to throw me away like garbage." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then we'll need to move quickly. If they're trying to close a sale in 2 weeks, we need to file an injunction immediately." "What about the life insurance policy?" "That's separate from the will. As the named beneficiary, that money is yours regardless of what happens with the vineyard." $2 million. Money my children didn't know about, money that would give me the resources to fight back. But I wanted more than just money. I wanted justice. "Thomas, I need you to do something else for me. I need you to investigate how my children got access to enough information to forge that will. I need to know who helped them." "Margaret, are you sure you want to go down this path? Sometimes the truth is more painful than the lie. I've already lived through the most painful thing imaginable, watching my children become strangers. Now I want to know how deep this betrayal goes." That afternoon, I drove to the bank where we'd done business for decades. Harrison Family Vineyards had three accounts: the main business account, the payroll account, and a personal account Jonathan and I used for household expenses. I'd been a signatory on all three accounts for years. What I found made my blood run cold. The business account had been drained. $340,000, our entire operating budget for the year, had been transferred out in 4 separate transactions over the past 6 weeks. The payroll account had been closed entirely. The personal account had been reduced to $800. The bank manager, a woman named Linda who'd handled our accounts for a decade, looked embarrassed as she showed me the transaction records. "Mrs. Harrison, I'm so sorry. Your son presented power of attorney documents giving him access to the accounts. I assumed you'd approved the transfers. I never signed any power of attorney documents." Linda's face went pale. "Oh my God, Margaret. We need to call the police. This is fraud." "Not yet," I said, photographing the transaction records with my phone. "I need to handle this my way first." I spent the rest of the afternoon tracking down where the money had gone. The largest transfer, $200,000, had gone to pay off debts for Jade's latest failed business venture. The second transfer, $100,000, had paid off Hunter's credit card debts and a loan on his New York apartment. The remaining $40,000 had covered their first-class flights and hotel expenses for the funeral. They'd literally used their father's death as an opportunity to rob him blind. But I was just getting started. That evening, I called Dr. Sarah Chin, Jonathan's longtime friend and one of the witnesses to his real will. "Margaret, I've been so worried about you. How are you holding up?" "I'm surviving, Sarah. But I need to ask you about something important. Do you remember signing a will for Jonathan about 2 weeks before he died?" "Of course. He was very clear about what he wanted to do. He was worried about you, about what would happen to you and the vineyard after he was gone." "Do you remember what he said about Hunter and Jade?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "He said they'd disappointed him, that they'd become greedy and entitled, and he was afraid they'd try to take advantage of you after his death. He wanted to make sure you were protected." "Sarah, did Hunter or Jade ever visit Jonathan alone during his final weeks, when I wasn't there?" "Actually, yes. Hunter came by one evening about 2 weeks before Jonathan died. He said he wanted to have a private conversation with his father to make peace before the end. I left them alone for about an hour. What happened during that hour? I don't know, but when I came back, Jonathan seemed agitated. He kept saying I shouldn't have signed that over and over. I thought he was just confused from the medication. Now I knew what had happened. Hunter had brought that forged will to his dying father, probably convincing him it was just a standard document or telling him it was temporary. Jonathan, weakened by pain and medication, had signed it without understanding what he was really doing. M.Y.'s son had manipulated his dying father into signing away his widow's inheritance. My daughter had helped by providing the distraction of her latest financial crisis, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed I was just a grieving widow who'd accept whatever they told me. They'd forgotten that I was also a businesswoman who'd helped build the vineyard from nothing, who'd fought for every success we'd achieved, who'd learned to be ruthless when necessary. They were about to rediscover that ruthlessness. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I planned. I made lists, I calculated resources, I identified weaknesses in their plan. By morning, I had a strategy that would not only save the vineyard, but destroy their ability to hurt anyone else ever again. The war was about to begin, and I intended to win it. Friday morning came with the kind of cruel beauty that makes tragedy feel even more surreal. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and the grapevines were showing their first tender leaves of spring. Jonathan would have loved this weather. He would have been out among the vines at dawn, checking for signs of new growth, planning for the coming season. Instead, I was preparing for battle. Hunter called at exactly 9 a.m., his voice crisp and professional, like he was calling about a business merger rather than dismantling his mother's life. Mom, I need your answer. The buyers want to close on Monday. Are you going to cooperate with this sale, or are we going to have to do this the hard way? What's the hard way, Hunter? Legal action. Mom, I don't want to have to evict you from your own home, but if you force our hand, evict me? The house is part of the business property. The buyers want vacant possession. Look, we found a great assisted living facility in Harrisburg. It's got everything you need: activities, meals, medical care. You'd be much happier there. I'm not going anywhere, Hunter. Mom, be reasonable. You can't run a vineyard at your age. You don't have the energy, the knowledge, or the legal right. Accept the situation and let us take care of you. Take care of me? Like you took care of me after the funeral? We gave you space to grieve. We were being respectful. You were being calculating. Just like you were being calculating when you drained the business accounts. Silence. Then Hunter's voice came back harder, colder. I don't know what you're talking about. $340,000, Hunter. Every penny of operating budget for the vineyard. Did you really think I would notice? Mom, I have power of attorney. Dad gave me authority to handle the business affairs. Show me those documents. I don't have to show you anything. You're not a legal party to this business anymore. We'll see about that. I hung up before he could respond. 20 minutes later, Jade called. Mom, Hunter says you're being difficult about the sale. What's going on? I'm being difficult? Jade, you've stolen money from your father's business to pay your debts. You've forged his will to steal my inheritance. And now you're calling me difficult? I have no idea what you're talking about. Hunter handles all the legal stuff. I just know we need to sell the vineyard, so we can all move on with our lives. Move on to what? Another failed business for you to flush money down the drain? Mom, that's not fair. The wellness retreat is going to be huge. The Dubai investors are flying in Monday specifically to see the property. If we don't have the money from the vineyard sale, I'll lose everything. You've already lost everything that matters, Jade. You've lost your integrity, your family, your father's respect. What more is there to lose? I'm trying to build something here. I'm trying to create a legacy. You're trying to create a legacy by destroying the one your father spent his life building? By throwing away the woman who raised you? God, Mom, you're being so dramatic. Nobody's throwing you away. We're just relocating you.
To where?
A nursing home. To a place where you'll be safe and taken care of. Where you won't have to worry about running a business you don't understand. I don't understand the business I've been managing for 20 years. Mom, let's be honest. Dad made the wine. You just did the paperwork. Just did the paperwork. Like managing inventory, coordinating with distributors, handling payroll, maintaining client relationships, and managing the finances was just paperwork. Like the business would have survived without my contributions. Jade, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not selling the vineyard. I am not moving to a nursing home. And I am not going to stand by while you and your brother destroy everything your father built. Then we'll have to do this without you.
Try.
I hung up and immediately called Thomas Mitchell. Thomas, I need you to file that injunction today. They're trying to close the sale on Monday. Already done, Margaret. The court order should be served within the hour. But I need to warn you, they're going to fight back hard. And they're going to try to make you look incompetent. Let them try. I've got 20 years of business records showing exactly how competent I am. There's something else, Margaret. I had a private investigator look into the financial transfers. We found some interesting information about your children's debts. What kind of information? The kind that might be relevant to criminal charges if they can't pay it back. My children weren't just greedy. They were desperate, which made them even more dangerous. The injunction was served at 11:30 a.m. Hunter called me at 11:45, screaming, "What the hell have you done? The sale is off. The buyers are furious. You've ruined everything. Good. Mom, you don't understand. There are people who need this money. People who will be very unhappy if they don't get it. What people? Just people. Business associates. Investors. People who made commitments based on this sale. You mean loan sharks and criminals. I mean legitimate business people who don't like to be disappointed. Hunter, are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality to you. This sale needs to happen. If it doesn't, there are going to be consequences. For who? For all of us, but especially for you. He hung up, but the threat was clear. My children weren't just trying to steal my inheritance. They were trying to use it to pay off dangerous people. And if I didn't cooperate, those people might come looking for alternative solutions that I wasn't afraid. I was furious. That afternoon, I drove to the vineyard to survey what was mine. The vines were healthy, showing no signs of the neglect my children claimed would destroy the business. The equipment was in good condition. The inventory was well managed. The client relationships were strong. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the $340,000 my children had stolen. I was walking through the vines when I heard a car pull up. I turned to see a silver sedan with tinted windows, the kind of car that screamed, "I'm trying to look legitimate, but I'm actually very dangerous." Two men got out. Both were wearing expensive suits that didn't quite hide the fact that they were built for violence rather than business. They approached me with the kind of false friendliness that made my skin crawl. "Mrs. Harrison?" the taller one asked.
I'm Kyle Morrison.
"This is my associate, Jake Stevens. We're here about the vineyard sale. The sale is off." "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We have a contract with your son. Money has already changed hands." "Money for what?" "For the guarantee that this sale would happen. Your son was very confident that you'd be cooperative." "My son was wrong." Kyle smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am, I think you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a request. This is a notification. The sale is happening, with or without your cooperation. The sale is legally impossible. There's an injunction. Injunctions can be lifted. Accidents can happen. Old ladies can fall downstairs, suffer strokes, become incompetent. Lots of ways to solve a problem like this." Jake stepped closer. "Mrs. Harrison, your son owes my employer $500,000. Your daughter owes another $200,000. The vineyard sale was supposed to cover those debts with some leftover for everyone. Now that the sale is off, we need to discuss alternative arrangements." "Alternative arrangements?" "Your son suggested that you might be persuaded to sign over power of attorney. Make things easier for everyone. And if I refuse?" Kyle's smile widened. "Ma'am, you're 67 years old. You live alone in a big house on a remote vineyard. Accidents happen to people like you all the time, especially when they're being unreasonable about business matters." I looked at these two men, these enforcers my children had brought into my life, and felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, pure, undiluted rage. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice calm despite the fury building inside me, "you're making a mistake. You're assuming I'm a helpless old woman who'll be intimidated by threats. You're wrong." "Are we?" Kyle asked. "You're also assuming that my children are the only ones with connections in this town. You're wrong about that too." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that you're standing on my property, threatening my life, and you have no idea who you're dealing with. Now get off my land before I call the sheriff." "The sheriff can't help you if you're dead." "No, but the sheriff can help you if you're alive." Sheriff Dan Peterson is a friend of mine. He's also a friend of my late husband. He takes threats against local business owners very seriously. I pulled out my phone and showed them the number already dialed. "One button, gentlemen. One button, and you're explaining to Sheriff Peterson why you're threatening a widow on her own property." Kyle and Jake exchanged glances. They'd come expecting to intimidate a helpless old woman, not a woman who knew how to fight back. "This isn't over," Kyle said as they backed toward their car. "No," I agreed. "It's not. But the next time you come here, you'll be dealing with more than just me." They drove away, but I knew they'd be back. And next time, they wouldn't be interested in conversation. That evening, I called Hunter. "Congratulations," I said when he answered. "You've officially brought criminals into our family business." "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about." "Kyle Morrison and Jake Stevens. They visited me today to discuss your debts. $500,000 for you, $200,000 for Jade. Did you really think you could use loan sharks to pressure me into signing over the vineyard?" "Mom, those are legitimate business associates." "Hunter, they threatened to kill me. On my own property. Because you promised them money from a sale that was never going to happen."
I
didn't know they'd approach you directly." "No, you just thought you'd let them know where to find me when the sale fell through. Just in case they needed to apply some pressure. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? You steal my inheritance, sell my home, throw me in a nursing home, and use the money to pay off your gambling debts." "They aren't gambling debts." "Then what are they?" "Investment losses. Business loans. Legitimate financial obligations. To loan sharks and criminals. To people who don't like to be disappointed." "Hunter, listen to me very carefully. If anything happens to me, if I have an accident, if I become incompetent, if I disappear, the first person the police will investigate is you. And when they find out about your debts, about the forged will, about the money you stole, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison." "Mom, you're overreacting." "No, Hunter. I'm just getting started." I hung up and immediately called Thomas Mitchell. "Thomas, I need you to prepare additional documents. I want everything legally bulletproof. And I want you to make sure that if anything happens to me, my children get nothing." "Margaret, what's going on?" "My children just graduated from theft to murder. Now it's time for them to learn what happens when you threaten the wrong person." The next morning, I would begin the systematic destruction of everything my children thought they knew about their future. But first, I had a more immediate problem to solve that I had to survive the night. Saturday morning brought the kind of false calm that feels like holding your breath. The vineyard was quiet, the morning mist hanging over the vines like a shroud, and I was alone in the house where I'd spent the happiest years of my life. But I wasn't afraid. I was preparing. You see, what my children didn't understand about their mother was that I hadn't just been Jonathan's wife and business partner. I'd been his protector, his strategist, his shield against anyone who tried to take advantage of his generous nature. I'd spent 4 decades fighting for this vineyard, for this family, for this life we'd built together. Now I was going to fight for myself. I called Sheriff Dan Peterson at 8 a.m. Dan had been Jonathan's friend for 30 years, a man who'd helped us through everything from drunk customers to attempted break-ins to the neighbor dispute over water rights that had nearly bankrupted us in the 90s. "Margaret, I heard about the visitors you had yesterday. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dan. But I need to talk to you about something serious."
I'm listening."
"My children are in debt to some very dangerous people. People who think they can use threats and intimidation to force me to sell my property. I need protection, but I also need to handle this my way." "What kind of dangerous people?" "The kind who make $700,000 loans to desperate people and expect payment in full regardless of the borrower's ability to pay." Dan was quiet for a moment. "Margaret, are you telling me your kids are mixed up with organized crime?" "I'm telling you they're mixed up with people who think murder is a reasonable solution to a business problem."
Jesus, Margarete.
"Do you want me to arrest these guys?" "Not yet. I want to catch them in the act. But I need backup when I do." "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to give them exactly what they think they want. And then I'm planning to destroy them." Dan was quiet for a long moment. Margaret, you're talking about using yourself as bait. I'm talking about ending this before it gets worse. Dan, these people threatened to kill me yesterday. If I don't deal with them now, they'll keep coming back. And eventually, they'll decide I'm more trouble than I'm worth.
What do you need from me?
I need you to monitor my phone. I need you to have deputies positioned around the property. And I need you to be ready to move when I give the signal. Margaret, this is dangerous. Dan, everything is dangerous now. The question is whether I'm going to be a victim or a survivor. After I hung up with Dan, I made my second call to someone my children had no idea existed. Crawford Security, this is Marcus Crawford. Marcus, this is Margaret Harrison. I need to discuss security for the vineyard. Mrs. Harrison, I'm sorry for your loss. Jonathan was a good man. Thank you. Marcus, I need to ask you about something. Do you remember the security system you installed for us 5 years ago? The one your husband said was overkill? The one with the hidden cameras and the panic room? That's the one. What about it? I need to know if it's still operational. Every inch of it. Your husband insisted on the highest quality equipment. Why? Because some very dangerous people are planning to visit me soon. And I want to make sure our conversation is properly recorded. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Harrison, are you in danger? I'm in control. There's a difference.
What do you need from me?
I need you to check all the cameras, make sure the audio is clear, and ensure that everything is being recorded to the offsite server. And I need you to give Sheriff Peterson access to the live feed.
Done.
Anything else? I need you to be ready to testify in court about what you see. Are you planning to have these people arrested? I'm planning to have them convicted. After I hung up with Marcus, I made my third call to Thomas Mitchell. Thomas, I need you to prepare something for me. A letter to be opened only in the event of my death or disappearance. Margaret, what's going on? Insurance. If something happens to me, I want to make sure the right people are held accountable. What should the letter say? It should say that if I die or disappear, the police should investigate my children first. It should detail the forged will, the stolen money, the threats, and the criminals they've brought into my life. And it should make clear that Hunter and Jade are directly responsible for whatever happens to me. Margaret, this sounds like you're expecting to die. I'm expecting to survive, but I'm preparing for every possibility. What else do you need? I need you to prepare a new will. One that makes very clear what happens to the vineyard if I die under suspicious circumstances. What do you want it to say? I want it to say that if I die within the next 5 years, the vineyard goes to the local land trust. Hunter and Jade get nothing. Not a penny, not a grapevine, not even the right to visit the property where their father is buried. That's harsh, Margaret. It's necessary. If they're going to threaten my life for money, they should know that killing me will eliminate the money entirely. When do you want me to file this?
Today.
I want it legally binding before nightfall. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I cooked. Not because I was hungry, but because I needed to stay busy while I waited for my children to make their next move. I made Jonathan's favorite meal, pot roast with vegetables, mashed potatoes, and apple pie. The same meal I'd made for our first anniversary, for every birthday, for every celebration worth remembering. The smell filled the house with memories of better times, when my children were still my children and not the strangers they'd become. At 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was Jade. Mom, I'm flying in tonight. I need to talk to you. About what? About the vineyard.
About the sale.
About what's best for everyone.
There's nothing to talk about, Jade.
The vineyard isn't for sale. Mom, please. The Dubai investors are flying in tomorrow. If I don't have the money from the vineyard sale, I'll lose everything. My whole future depends on this. Your future depends on learning to build something without destroying everyone around you. I'm not destroying anyone. I'm trying to help us all move forward. By stealing from your father's business? By forging his will? By threatening your mother? I haven't threatened anyone. No, you just stood by while your brother brought loan sharks to my house. I don't know anything about that. Jade, you're a terrible liar. You've always been a terrible liar. Mom, please. Can we just talk? Face to face? Like adults. Fine. Come to the house. We'll talk.
Thank you.
I'll be there by 8 p.m. I hung up and immediately called Hunter. Hunter, your sister is coming to the house tonight. Are you coming too? Mom, I'm in New York. I can't just drop everything. No, but you can drop everything to send criminals to threaten me. I told you, those weren't criminals. They were business associates. Hunter, I need to ask you something. Are you planning to have me killed?
What?
Mom, that's insane. Why would you ask that? Because I'm 67 years old, I live alone on a remote vineyard, and I'm the only thing standing between you and $4.2 million.
People have been murdered for much less.
Mom, nobody's planning to murder you. But if I had an accident, if I became incompetent, if I just disappeared, your problems would be solved, wouldn't they?
I
don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say that you wouldn't let anyone hurt me. I want you to say that you'd protect me the way I've protected you your entire life. Of course I'd protect you. You're my mother.
No, Hunter.
I was your mother. Now, I'm just an inconvenience. Mom, that's not true. Then prove it. Come to the house tonight. Stand between me and the people who want to hurt me. I can't. I have to work. You have to work on Sunday night? I have to. I have obligations. To who? The people you owe money to. Mom, I can't discuss this over the phone. Then come home and discuss it in person. I can't. Because you're a coward. Because you'd rather let strangers threaten your mother than face the consequences of your own choices. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, Hunter. But it's about to become just. I hung up and checked my preparations one final time. The cameras were recording. The sheriff was on standby. The security system was armed. The newel was filed, and I was ready. At 7:30 p.m., I saw headlights coming up the driveway. Not Jade's rental car, but a large black SUV with tinted windows. The same type of vehicle Kyle Morrison and Jake Stevens had driven the day before. I activated the panic button on my security system, sending an alert to both Sheriff Peterson and Marcus Crawford. Then I waited. The SUV stopped in front of the house. 4 men got out. Kyle Morrison and Jake Stevens, plus 2 others I didn't recognize. All of them were wearing dark clothes and carrying themselves like soldiers preparing for war, and I met them at the front door, my phone in my hand, my finger poised over the speed dial for 911. Gentlemen, I said through the screen door, this is private property. You're trespassing. Mrs. Harrison, Kyle said, his voice deceptively friendly. We're here to finish our conversation from yesterday. We have nothing to talk about. Ma'am, your son owes my employer $500,000. Your daughter owes another $200,000. The vineyard sale was supposed to cover those debts. Now that the sale is off, we need to discuss alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements? Your son suggested that you might be willing to sign over power of attorney. Make things easier for everyone. My son suggested that I'd be intimidated by threats. Your son suggested that you'd be reasonable about business matters. And if I'm not reasonable? Kyle smiled. Ma'am, you're 67 years old. You live alone on a remote vineyard. Accidents happen to people like you all the time. What kind of accidents? House fires. Falls downstairs. Heart attacks brought on by stress. Lots of ways for an old lady to die when she's being unreasonable about business matters. And then what happens? Then your son inherits everything. The vineyard gets sold. Everyone gets paid. Problem solved. except for the part where you'd be committing murder. Ma'am, we're not talking about murder. We're talking about accidents, natural causes, the kind of thing that happens to old people all the time, especially when they're being unreasonable about business matters. Exactly. I looked at these four men, these killers my children had brought into my life, and felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, absolute clarity about what needed to happen next. Gentlemen, I said, my voice calm despite the fury building inside me. You're making a mistake. Are we? You're assuming that I'm a helpless old woman who'll be intimidated by threats. You're wrong. Ma'am, you're outnumbered 4-1. You're outmuscled. You're outgunned. You're not in a position to make demands. You're also assuming that this conversation isn't being recorded. Kyle's smile faltered. What? Cameras.
Audio.
Everything you've said in the last 5 minutes is being recorded to an off-site server and transmitted live to Sheriff Peterson's office. You're lying. Am I? Kyle Morrison, Jake Stevens, and 2 unidentified associates, threatening to murder a 67-year-old woman on her own property, demanding that she sign over power of attorney to cover debts owed by her son and daughter, discussing plans to make my death look like an accident. Kyle's face went pale. That's not what we said. That's exactly what you said. And now Sheriff Peterson has everything he needs to arrest you for conspiracy to commit murder. Lady, you're bluffing. Am I? Turn around. Kyle turned around to see sheriff's deputies emerging from the vineyard, weapons drawn, surrounding the house. Sheriff Peterson stepped out of the shadows, his hand on his gun. Kyle Morrison, Jake Stevens, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, extortion, and making terroristic threats. As the deputies moved in to arrest the 4 men, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Satisfaction. Not happiness, not relief, but the cold satisfaction of watching a plan come together perfectly. But this was just the beginning. My children had brought these people into my life, and now they were going to pay the price for that choice. As the SUV was towed away and the men were loaded into police cars, I called Hunter. Hunter, I have news for you. What news? Your business associates have been arrested. Conspiracy to commit murder. They're looking at 25 years to life.
What?
That's impossible. It's recorded, Hunter. Everything they said about killing me to solve your debt problems. Everything they said about making it look like an accident. Everything they said about you suggesting I'd be intimidated by threats. I never suggested that. That's not what they said. They said you told them I'd be reasonable about business matters. They said you suggested I'd sign over power of attorney. They said you presented me as a helpless old woman who could be intimidated. I didn't know they were going to threaten you. No, you just put me in a position where threatening me was the logical next step.
Mom, I'm sorry.
I never wanted anyone to get hurt. But you were perfectly willing to let someone get hurt if it solved your problems. That's not true. Hunter, your business associates are going to prison. They're going to plea bargain to reduce their sentences. They're going to tell the prosecutor exactly how they knew to find me, exactly what you told them about the vineyard sale, exactly what you suggested they do to make me cooperate. I didn't suggest anything. Then you have nothing to worry about. Unless, of course, you're lying. I hung up and immediately called Jade. Jade, where are you? I'm at the airport. My flight was delayed. I'll be there in a few hours. Don't bother. The situation has changed. What do you mean? I mean that the men your brother hired to threaten me have been arrested. I mean that there's a recorded confession of their plans to murder me. I mean that your brother is about to be charged as an accessory to conspiracy to commit murder.
What?
That's impossible. It's recorded, Jade. Everything they said about killing me to solve your debt problems. I don't know anything about that. You know about the $200,000 you owe to loan sharks. You know about the Dubai investors who are expecting money from the vineyard sale. You know about the threats against me if that sale doesn't happen.
I,
I thought they were just trying to scare you. They were trying to kill me, Jade. And you were perfectly willing to let them do it if it solved your problems. That's not true. Then explain to me why you're flying in tonight.
to talk to me?
Or to make sure I'm dead.
To talk to you.
To work out a solution. The solution is simple, Jade. You and your brother are going to prison. The vineyard is staying in the family. And you're never going to see a penny of your father's money.
Mom, please.
We can work this out.
No, Jade.
We can't. Because you stopped being my daughter the moment you decided my life was worth less than your debts. I hung up and looked around the house where I'd spent the happiest years of my life. The house where I'd raised 2 children who'd turned into strangers. The house where I'd loved a man who died believing his family would take care of each other. Jonathan had been wrong about many things, but he'd been right about one thing. His children had disappointed him. They'd become greedy, entitled, and dangerous. But he'd also been right about something else. I was stronger than anyone realized. Strong enough to survive their betrayal. Strong enough to fight back. Strong enough to make sure they never hurt anyone else the way they'd hurt me. The war was far from over. But I'd won the first battle. Sunday morning brought news that changed everything. Sheriff Peterson called me at 7 a.m., his voice grim but satisfied. Margaret, I have an update on your situation. Kyle Morrison talked. What did he say? He said your son Hunter approached him 6 weeks ago. Said his mother was being unreasonable about a business matter and needed to be persuaded to see things differently. Said he'd pay $100,000 if they could make you cooperate. Cooperate with what? Signing over power of attorney. Agreeing to the vineyard sale. Moving to a nursing home voluntarily. And if I didn't cooperate, then they were authorized to use whatever methods necessary to solve the problem permanently. I felt ice water in my veins. Hunter hired them to kill me? Not directly. But he made it clear that your death would solve his problems and that he'd be grateful to anyone who helped make that happen. What about Jade? She was present at 2 of the meetings. She knew what was being discussed. She provided them with information about your routine, your security, your vulnerabilities. Such as the fact that you live alone on a remote vineyard, that you don't have security cameras, or so they thought, that you're physically frail and would be easy to overpower. Physically frail. That's what your daughter told them. She said you were becoming senile and weak, that you wouldn't be able to defend yourself. I almost laughed. Jade had always underestimated me. Even as a child, she'd assumed that because I was quiet and nurturing, I was weak. She'd never understood that raising 2 children alone while building a business from scratch required a different kind of strength. Dan, what are the charges? Kyle Morrison and Jake Stevens are charged with conspiracy to commit murder, extortion, and making terroristic threats. The other 2 men are charged as accessories. But that's not all. What else? Hunter and Jade are being charged as co-conspirators. The DA has enough evidence to show that they hired these men to threaten you and that they knew violence was a possibility. How much time are we talking about? 10 to 25 years, depending on how well they cooperate with a prosecution. And the vineyard stays with you. The forged will is inadmissible, and the real will is being probated. You're the legal owner of everything. What about the money they stole from the business accounts? That's a separate case. We're charging them with embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. Another 5 to 10 years each. Dan, I need to ask you something. Are my children going to prison? Margaret, unless they can prove they didn't know these men were planning to hurt you, yes. They're going to prison. I hung up and felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Peace. Not happiness, not joy, but the quiet satisfaction of justice being served. But my work wasn't finished. Hunter and Jade had brought criminals into my life, stolen my money, forged my husband's will, and tried to have me killed. Prison was just the beginning of what they deserved. I called Thomas Mitchell. Thomas, I need you to prepare civil lawsuits against both my children. I want to sue them for every penny they've stolen, every dollar in damages, and every cent they'll ever earn. Margaret, they're about to go to prison. Isn't that enough? Prison is what they deserve from the state. The lawsuits are what they deserve from me. What are you hoping to accomplish? I'm hoping to make sure they never have the resources to hurt anyone else the way they've hurt me. You want to destroy them financially? I want to destroy them completely. Their careers, their reputations, their ability to function in society. I want them to understand what it feels like to lose everything important to you. That's comprehensive. It's justice, Thomas. They tried to have me killed for money. Now they're going to discover what it costs to threaten the wrong person. What do you want the lawsuits to say? I want them to detail every theft, every lie, every moment of emotional abuse. I want them to show a pattern of elder abuse that goes back years. I want them to be public record so that anyone who Googles their names will know exactly what kind of people they are. Margaret, this will destroy any chance of reconciliation. Thomas, there was never going to be a reconciliation. They tried to have me murdered. That's not a family dispute. It's a criminal conspiracy. That afternoon, I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I called the Dubai investors who were supposed to meet with Jade on Monday. Mr. Al-Rashid, this is Margaret Harrison. I'm Jade Harrison's mother. Mrs. Harrison, I'm sorry for your loss. Jade told us about your husband's passing.
Thank you.
I'm calling because I need to inform you about some developments regarding Jade's business proposal. What kind of developments? The kind that involve criminal charges. Criminal charges? Mr. Al-Rashid, my daughter is currently being arrested for conspiracy to commit murder. She's also being charged with embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. I thought you should know before you invest in her business. Mrs. Harrison, I think there's been a misunderstanding.
No misunderstanding.
Jade has been stealing money from our family business to fund her lifestyle. She's been lying to investors about her financial situation. And she's been involved in a plan to have me killed so she could inherit money to pay you back. This is very serious. It's also very public. The arrests are being covered by the local news. The court documents will be public record. Anyone who does business with Jade will be associated with these charges. Mrs. Harrison, we will need to reconsider our investment. I think that's wise. I also think you should warn other investors about Jade's situation. She's desperate for money and willing to do anything to get it. We will take your advice under consideration. Mr. Al-Rashid, one more thing. Jade has been lying to you about the source of her funding. The money she was expecting from the vineyard sale was money she was planning to steal from me. You wouldn't have been investing in a legitimate business. You have been investing in the proceeds of theft and conspiracy to commit murder. We will not be investing in Ms. Harrison's business. I thought you'd want to know. After I hung up, I made similar calls to every investor, every business partner, every professional contact Jade had mentioned over the years. By the end of the day, her entire network knew about the criminal charges, the theft, the conspiracy to murder her own mother. Her business was dead. Her reputation was destroyed. Her future was as empty as the promises she'd made to everyone she'd ever met, but I wasn't finished with Hunter. Monday morning, I called the investment firm where Hunter worked as a senior analyst. Mr. Davidson, this is Margaret Harrison. I'm Hunter Harrison's mother. Mrs. Harrison, I'm sorry for your loss. Hunter told us about your husband's passing.
Thank you.
I'm calling because I need to inform you about some developments regarding Hunter's legal situation. What kind of developments? The kind that involve federal charges. Federal charges? Mr. Davidson, my son is currently being arrested for conspiracy to commit murder. He's also being charged with embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. I thought you should know before these charges become public. Mrs. Harrison, I think there's been a misunderstanding.
No misunderstanding.
Hunter has been stealing money from our family business to cover his gambling debts. He's been lying about his financial situation. And he's been involved in a plan to have me killed so he could inherit money to pay off loan sharks. This is very serious. It's also very public. The arrests are being covered by the financial news. The court documents will be public record. Anyone who does business with Hunter will be associated with these charges. Mrs. Harrison, we will need to investigate this immediately. I think that's wise. I also think you should know that Hunter has been using your company's resources to communicate with criminals. His work phone and email are part of the evidence in the criminal case. We will need to suspend Hunter immediately. I thought you'd want to know. Mrs. Harrison, can you provide us with documentation of these charges? I can provide you with the arrest warrants, the court documents, and the sheriff's report. I can also provide you with recorded conversations between Hunter and the men he hired to threaten me. Please send everything to my office immediately. I'll have my lawyer deliver the documents this afternoon. After I hung up, I made similar calls to every professional contact Hunter had mentioned over the years. His colleagues, his clients, his industry connections. By the end of the day, everyone in his professional network knew about the criminal charges, the theft, the conspiracy to murder his own mother. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. His future was as empty as the promises he'd made to everyone he'd ever met. But I still wasn't finished. That evening, I called every family member, every family friend, every person who'd known Hunter and Jade as children. I told them about the criminal charges, the theft, the conspiracy to murder their own mother. I told them about the forged will, the stolen money, the threats against my life. I told them that the children everyone had known and loved had become criminals willing to kill their own mother for money. By Tuesday morning, Hunter and Jade had no friends, no family, no professional contacts, no social connections. They were pariahs in their own community, criminals in the eyes of the law, and strangers in the family they'd tried to destroy. But the best part was yet to come. Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Thomas Mitchell. Margaret, I have news. Hunter and Jade want to make a deal. What kind of deal? They want to plead guilty to reduce charges in exchange for returning the money they stole. How much money? All of it, plus interest.
Plus dommage. Plus penalty.
They're talking about a settlement of over $500,000. And in exchange, they want the civil lawsuits dropped. They want you to stop contacting their professional associates. They want you to stop destroying their reputations. Thomas, what did you tell them? I told them I'd discuss it with my client. Here's my response. No. Margaret, this would get you your money back and ensure they go to prison. Isn't that enough? No, Thomas. It's not enough. They tried to have me killed. They don't get to negotiate their way out of the consequences. What do you want? I want them to plead guilty to all charges. I want them to go to prison for the maximum sentence. I want them to pay full restitution. And I want them to publicly admit what they did and why they did it. That's everything. That's justice, Thomas. They try to have me murdered. Now they're going to discover what it costs to threaten the wrong person. And if they refuse, then I'll continue destroying their lives one phone call at a time until they have nothing left to lose. Margaret, you're talking about comprehensive destruction. I'm talking about appropriate consequences for trying to murder your own mother. They're your children. No, Thomas. They were my children. Now, they're just criminals who made the mistake of targeting the wrong victim. The next morning, I got my answer. Hunter and Jade agreed to plead guilty to all charges, pay full restitution, and make public statements admitting their crimes and expressing remorse for their actions. But I still wasn't finished with them. The courtroom was packed on Thursday morning for Hunter and Jade's sentencing hearing. Everyone was there, the prosecutor, the defense attorneys, the families of the other defendants, and reporters from 3 different newspapers. Word had gotten out about the case. Two adult children who tried to have their mother murdered for her inheritance. I sat in the front row, wearing the black dress I'd worn to Jonathan's funeral. The same dress I'd worn when I buried the man who'd spent his life believing his children would take care of me after he was gone. Hunter was called first. He stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled, his face pale and hollow. The confident businessman who dismissed me as a helpless old woman had been replaced by a broken man who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. "Mr. Harrison," Judge Patricia Williams said, her voice stern but not unkind, "you've pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. Do you understand the seriousness of these charges?" "Yes, Your Honor." "The victim in this case is your 67-year-old mother, a woman who raised you as a single parent, who worked multiple jobs to pay for your education, who mortgaged her home to help you start your career. Do you understand the severity of what you've done?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Harrison, the court has received a victim impact statement from your mother. She has requested to read it aloud. Do you have any objection?" "No, Your Honor." Judge Williams looked at me. "Mrs. Harrison, you may proceed." I stood and walked to the podium, carrying the statement I'd written by hand the night before. I looked directly at Hunter as I began to read. "Your Honor, my name is Margaret Harrison. I am the mother of the defendant, Hunter Harrison. I am also his victim. For 35 years, I loved this man unconditionally. I sacrificed my own dreams, my own needs, my own financial security to ensure that he had every opportunity to succeed. I worked 3 jobs to pay for his education. I mortgaged my home to help him start his career. I emptied my savings account to support him through every crisis. In return, he tried to have me murdered. Your Honor, this case is not about a family dispute over money. This case is about a man who decided that his mother's life was worth less than his debts. A man who hired criminals to threaten, intimidate, and ultimately kill the woman who gave him life. Hunter Harrison is not a victim of circumstance. He is not a man who made a mistake in judgment. He is a man who calculated the value of his mother's life and decided it was acceptable to end it for financial gain. Your Honor, I ask that you sentence Hunter Harrison to the maximum penalty allowed by law. Not because I want revenge, but because I want justice. I want him to understand that trying to murder your own mother is not a business decision. It's a crime that destroys families, ruins lives, and violates every principle of human decency. I also want other potential victims to know that elder abuse has consequences. That children who prey on their aging parents will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Your Honor, Hunter Harrison is my son, but he is also a criminal who tried to have me killed. I ask that you sentence him as the criminal he has chosen to become." I folded the statement and returned to my seat. Hunter was crying, his shoulders shaking with sobs. But I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sadness, no regret. Just the cold satisfaction of watching justice unfold. Judge Williams sentenced Hunter to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole for 15 years. She also ordered him to pay $400,000 in restitution and to have no contact with me for the rest of his life. As they led him away in shackles, Hunter looked back at me one last time. His eyes were pleading, desperate, searching for some sign of the mother who'd forgiven him for every mistake he'd ever made. But that mother was gone. She died the moment he decided my life was worth less than his debts. Next came Jade. She stood before the judge in the same orange jumpsuit, her hair lank and unwashed, her makeup long since cried away. The glamorous entrepreneur who dismissed me as a pathetic old woman had been replaced by a hollow-eyed stranger who looked like she'd finally run out of other people's money. "Harrison," Judge Williams said, "you've pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. Do you understand the seriousness of these charges?" "Yes, Your Honor." The victim in this case is your 67-year-old mother, a woman who raised you, who supported your education, who funded your various business ventures even when they failed. Do you understand the severity of what you've done? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Harrison, your mother has requested to read a second victim impact statement. Do you have any objection? No, Your Honor. I stood again and walked to the podium. This time, I looked directly at Jade as I began to read. Your Honor, my name is Margaret Harrison. I am the mother of the defendant, Jade Harrison. I am also her victim. For 32 years, I loved this woman unconditionally. I supported her dreams, her ambitions, her endless series of failed business ventures. I gave her money I couldn't afford to give. I covered her debts when she couldn't pay them. I believed in her when no one else would. In return, she tried to have me murdered. Your Honor, Jade Harrison has never earned an honest dollar in her life. She has never built anything of value. She has never contributed anything positive to society. She has lived her entire adult life by taking money from others and calling it entrepreneurship. When she finally ran out of other people's money, she decided that the solution was to kill the one person who'd never stopped believing in her potential. Your Honor, this case is not about a daughter who made a mistake. This case is about a woman who decided that her mother's life was worth less than her debts. A woman who provided criminals with information about my daily routine, my security, my vulnerabilities so they could plan my murder more effectively. Jade Harrison is not a victim of circumstance. She is a predator who has spent her entire life preying on the people who loved her most. She is a woman who would kill her own mother rather than face the consequences of her own choices. Your Honor, I ask that you sentence Jade Harrison to the maximum penalty allowed by law. Not because I want revenge, but because I want justice. I want her to understand that trying to murder your own mother is not a business decision. It's a crime that destroys families, ruins lives, and violates every principle of human decency. I also want other potential victims to know that elder abuse has consequences. That children who prey on their aging parents will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Your Honor, Jade Harrison is my daughter, but she is also a criminal who tried to have me killed. I ask that you sentence her as the criminal she has chosen to become. I folded the statement and returned to my seat. Jade was sobbing, her whole body shaking with grief. But I felt nothing.
No sympathy, no sadness, no regret.
Just the cold satisfaction of watching justice unfold. Judge Williams sentenced Jade to 20 years in prison without the possibility of parole for 12 years. She also ordered her to pay $300,000 in restitution and to have no contact with me for the rest of her life. As they led her away in shackles, Jade looked back at me one last time. Her eyes were pleading, desperate, searching for some sign of the mother who'd forgiven her for every failure, who'd funded every dream, who'd believed in her when no one else would. But that mother was gone. She'd died the moment Jade had decided my life was worth less than her debts. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The reporters tried to ask me questions, but I had nothing to say to them. The prosecutor thanked me for my courage, but I hadn't been courageous. I'd been furious. I drove home to the vineyard in silence, past the vines that were now showing their first full leaves of spring. Past the barn where Jonathan had taught Hunter to change the oil in his first car. Past the garden where I'd taught Jade to plant her first tomatoes. Past the memories of children who no longer existed. That evening, I called Sheriff Peterson. Dan, I wanted to thank you for everything you did to help me through this. Margaret, you don't need to thank me. You did most of the work yourself. What happens now? Now your children go to prison. Now you get your money back. Now you get to live in peace. What about the other men? Kyle Morrison and the others? They're pleading guilty to avoid the death penalty. They'll probably get life sentences without parole. Good. Margaret, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you have any regrets about what you did? About sending your own children to prison? I thought about that question for a long time. Did I regret destroying their lives? Did I regret ending their careers? Did I regret ensuring they'd spend the next 15 to 20 years in prison?
No, Dan?
I don't regret any of it. They tried to have me killed. They forged their father's will. They stole our money. They brought criminals into our family. They stopped being my children the moment they decided my life was worth less than their debts. And now they're just criminals who made the mistake of targeting the wrong victim. What will you do with the vineyard? I'll run it, the way Jonathan and I always planned to. I'll make wine, I'll sell grapes, I'll employ local people, I'll contribute to the community. I'll live the life we built together. Without your children. Without the people who used to be my children. The real Hunter and Jade died years ago, Dan. They died when they decided that taking was more important than giving, that using people was more important than loving them, that money was more important than family. That's a hard truth to live with. It's easier than living with the lie that they were still my children when they were planning to murder me. After I hung up with Dan, I walked through the house one last time. I removed every photo of Hunter and Jade from the walls, every memento of their childhood, every reminder of who they used to be before they became criminals. I packed it all into boxes and stored it in the basement, next to the Christmas decorations and the old furniture we'd never used but couldn't bear to throw away. They were part of my past now. Not my present. Not my future. Just my past. 6 months later, I stood in the vineyard at dawn, watching the sun rise over the vines that were heavy with fruit. The grapes were almost ready for harvest, the culmination of a year of work, of seasons of careful tending, of the kind of patient nurturing that builds something beautiful from nothing. It was the first harvest since Jonathan's death. The first harvest since Hunter and Jade's arrest. The first harvest of my new life, that I wasn't alone. I'd hired a crew of local workers, people who understood winemaking, who respected the land, who saw the vineyard as more than just a business opportunity. People who reminded me why Jonathan and I had fallen in love with this life in the first place. Mrs. Harrison called Maria Santos, the woman I'd hired as my vineyard manager. The sugar levels are perfect. We can start harvesting next week. How do the grapes look? Beautiful. The best I've seen in years. Your husband would be proud. Yes, he would. I'd spent the past 6 months rebuilding everything Hunter and Jade had tried to destroy. The business accounts were healthy again, thanks to the restitution payments and the insurance money. The vineyard was thriving under proper management. The reputation we'd built over 4 decades was intact, but most importantly, I was thriving. I'd lost 30 pounds. I'd started exercising regularly. I'd renewed old friendships that had been neglected during Jonathan's illness. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious. Just dinner with a retired professor named David who made me laugh and treated me like a woman worth knowing. I'd also done something that would have been impossible 6 months ago. I'd stopped checking the news about Hunter and Jade's imprisonment. I'd stopped wondering how they were adjusting to life in prison. I'd stopped caring about their appeals, their parole hearings, their attempts to contact me through intermediaries. They were my past. My present was the vineyard, the wine, the life I was building from the ashes of their betrayal. That afternoon, I was in the tasting room when Thomas Mitchell called. Margaret, I have news. Hunter and Jade's appeals have been denied. I expected that. There's more. Hunter has been asking about the possibility of a supervised visit. He says he wants to apologize in person.
No.
Margaret, he's your son.
No, Thomas.
He's a criminal who tried to have me murdered. My son died the day he hired those men to threaten me. People can change, Margaret. Prison can be rehabilitative. Maybe. But it's not my job to rehabilitate him. It's not my job to forgive him. And it's not my job to pretend that what he did was forgivable. What about Jade? What about her? She's also asking for a visit. She says she wants to make amends. She can make amends by serving her full sentence and never contacting me again. Margaret, you're talking about cutting your children out of your life forever. I'm talking about protecting myself from people who tried to kill me. Thomas, would you recommend that any other victim of attempted murder maintain contact with their attackers? No, but this is different. This is family. No, Thomas. This is what's left after family fails. This is what happens when blood relations become criminal conspiracies. What happens when they get out of prison? They'll be middle-aged ex-convicts with no money, no family, no support system, and no skills except manipulation and theft. They'll be exactly what they chose to become. And that doesn't concern you. Thomas, I'm 67 years old. I've got maybe 15 good years left. I'm not going to spend them worrying about people who tried to kill me. That's harsh, Margaret. It's realistic. Hunter and Jade made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. That evening, I had dinner with David at a small restaurant in town. We talked about books, about travel, about the kinds of things people discuss when they're getting to know each other as adults rather than as parents or children or business partners. You seem happier, David said as we shared a bottle of wine from my vineyard. I am happier. Any particular reason? I've stopped carrying other people's problems. I've stopped taking responsibility for other people's choices. I've stopped believing that love means accepting any behavior from the people you care about. That sounds like wisdom. It's survival. I nearly died trying to be a good mother to people who didn't want a mother. They wanted a victim. Do you miss them? I miss who they used to be. I miss the children they were before they became criminals. But I don't miss the people they became. Do you think they can change? I think they can serve their sentences and hopefully learn something from the experience. But it's not my job to facilitate that learning. It's not my job to provide them with motivation or support or forgiveness. What is your job? To live the life Jonathan and I built together. To make wine, to employ local people, to contribute to the community. To honor the legacy he left without being destroyed by the children who tried to destroy it. And to be happy. And to be happy. That night, I went to bed early and slept peacefully for the first time in months. I didn't dream about Hunter and Jade in prison. I didn't worry about their appeals or their parole hearings or their attempts to contact me. I dreamed about harvest time, about the smell of fermenting grapes, about the satisfaction of turning something raw into something beautiful. I dreamed about life without the burden of loving people who didn't love me back. 1 year after the sentencing, I received a letter that changed everything one final time. It was from the State Attorney General's office, informing me that Hunter and Jade's case had been selected for a special investigation into elder abuse in family businesses. The investigation revealed that what had happened to me wasn't unique. Across the country, adult children were systematically targeting their aging parents, stealing their money, forging their wills, and in some cases, arranging for their deaths to accelerate their inheritances. The Attorney General wanted to use Hunter and Jade's case as the centerpiece of a new initiative to protect elderly Americans from their own children. Mrs. Harrison, said Attorney General Patricia Walsh during our phone call, your courage in prosecuting your own children has opened the door to protecting thousands of other elderly Americans. Will you help us? What do you want me to do? We want you to testify before Congress about elder abuse. We want you to tell your story to legislators who are considering new laws to protect people like you. I'm not interested in becoming a public figure. You wouldn't be. You'd be a voice for justice. A voice for elderly Americans who are being victimized by their own children. I thought about it for a week. I thought about Jonathan, who died believing his children would take care of me. I thought about other elderly Americans who might be facing the same threats I'd faced. I thought about the responsibility that comes with surviving something that destroys other people. I'll do it, I told Attorney General Walsh.
But I want to be clear about something.
I'm not doing this because I want to be a victim advocate. I'm doing this because I want to be a survivor advocate. I want to show people that they don't have to be victims, even when their own children turn against them. What's the difference? A victim is someone who suffers. A survivor is someone who fights back. I want to teach people how to fight back. 2 months later, I stood before a House subcommittee on aging and told my story. I told them about the forged will, the stolen money, the threats against my life. I told them about the investigation, the arrests, the trials, the convictions, but most importantly, I told them about the aftermath. Congresswoman Martinez, I said, addressing the subcommittee chair, elder abuse is not just a crime against individuals. It's a crime against families, against communities, against the basic principles that hold our society together. How do you mean? When adult children prey on their aging parents, they're not just stealing money. They're destroying the trust that makes families possible. They're teaching their own children that elderly people are disposable. They're creating a culture where getting older means becoming a target. What should we do about it? You should make elder abuse a federal crime with mandatory minimum sentences. You should create a national database of elder abuse convictions so that potential victims can protect themselves. You should provide funding for elderly Americans to hire private investigators and security services when they suspect their own children of planning to harm them. Is that what you did?
Yes.
And it saved my life. What happened to your children? They're serving long prison sentences for conspiracy to commit murder. They have no contact with me. They have no access to any inheritance. They have no future except the one they created for themselves when they decided to become criminals. Do you regret what happened to them? Congresswoman Martinez, I regret that they became the kind of people who would try to murder their own mother. But I don't regret holding them accountable for that choice. What would you say to other elderly Americans who might be facing similar threats? I would say that blood relations don't give anyone the right to abuse you. I would say that being a parent doesn't mean accepting any behavior from your children. I would say that you have the right to protect yourself, even if that means destroying the people who are trying to destroy you. That's a hard message. It's a necessary message, because the alternative is being a victim, and I refuse to be a victim. My testimony was broadcast on C-SPAN and picked up by news networks across the country. Within a week, I was getting calls from elderly Americans across the country who were facing similar threats from their own children. Some wanted advice on how to protect themselves. Others wanted to share their own stories of betrayal and survival. A few wanted to know how to forgive their children for unforgivable crimes. That I helped the ones who wanted to fight back. I listened to the ones who needed to tell their stories. I couldn't help the ones who wanted to forgive, because I'd learned something important during my battle with Hunter and Jade. Some crimes are unforgivable. Some betrayals are too deep to heal. Some relationships are too damaged to repair, and that's okay. It's okay to cut toxic people out of your life, even if they're family. It's okay to protect yourself from people who want to harm you, even if they're your own children. It's okay to choose your own survival over other people's comfort. It's okay to win. 2 years after Hunter and Jade's sentencing, I stood in the same vineyard where this story began, but everything had changed. The vines were healthy and productive, the business was thriving, and I was surrounded by people who valued what I'd built rather than trying to destroy it. I'd married David 6 months earlier in a small ceremony at the vineyard. Nothing fancy, just family, friends, and neighbors who'd supported me through the darkest period of my life. People who understood that starting over at 69 wasn't a tragedy, it was a triumph. Mrs. Harrison called Maria Santos, walking toward me with a clipboard and a concerned expression. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that involves your children. I felt my chest tighten. What about them? Hunter's been released on parole. He's been asking around town about you, about the vineyard, about whether you might be willing to see him. Released? He was supposed to serve 15 years minimum. Good behavior. Participation in rehabilitation programs. The parole board decided he was ready for supervised release. And Jade, still in prison, but she's eligible for parole in 3 years. I stood there processing this information, feeling the old anger rising in my chest. After everything they'd done, after everything they'd put me through, they were going to be free to try again. Maria, call Sheriff Peterson. Tell him I need to speak with him immediately. Of course. And Maria? Increase security around the vineyard. I want cameras on every entrance, every building, every area where someone might try to approach the house. Are you expecting trouble? I'm expecting my son to remember why he went to prison in the first place. That afternoon, Sheriff Peterson sat in my living room, his hat in his hands, his expression grim. Margaret, I wish I had better news. Hunter's parole conditions are pretty standard. He can't leave the state. He has to check in with his parole officer weekly. He can't consume alcohol or drugs. But there's no restriction on him contacting you. Why not? Because the parole board decided that family reconciliation is part of his rehabilitation. They think maintaining family connections will help him reintegrate into society. Family connections? Dan, he tried to have me murdered.
I know.
But the parole board sees a son who made a mistake, serve his time, and now wants to make amends with his mother. What do you see? I see a dangerous man who's learned to say the right words to get what he wants. I see someone who's spent 2 years in prison thinking about how to get revenge on the person who put him there. What can I do? Legally? Nothing. He has a right to try to contact you. You have a right to refuse that contact. But you can't stop him from trying. What about a restraining order? Based on what? He hasn't threatened you. He hasn't approached you. He's just been asking around town about you. He's been asking around town about me. At the hardware store, the post office, the grocery store. People are telling him you're doing well, that you remarried, that the vineyard is thriving. What's he saying? That he's sorry. That he wants to make amends. That he hopes you can find it in your heart to forgive him. And people believe him. Margaret, most people want to believe that families can heal. They want to believe that prison can rehabilitate criminals. They want to believe that mothers eventually forgive their children. Most people don't have children who tried to murder them.
No.
They don't. That evening, I had dinner with David at our favorite restaurant in town. I told him about Hunter's release, about the parole conditions, about the possibility that he might try to contact me.
How do you feel about that?
David asked. Angry. Frightened. Determined. Determined to do what? To make sure he understands that nothing has changed. That he's still the same person who tried to have me killed. That I'm still the same person who sent him to prison. And if he actually has changed, then he'll respect my wishes and stay away from me. And if he hasn't changed, then he'll discover that 2 years in prison hasn't made me any less capable of defending myself. Margaret, what are you planning? I'm planning to survive, whatever that takes. The next morning, I was working in the vineyard when I saw a familiar figure walking up the dirt road toward the house. Older, thinner, wearing clothes that looked like they'd come from a thrift store, but unmistakably Hunter. I watched him approach, my hand moving instinctively to the cell phone in my pocket. He stopped at the edge of the property, probably remembering that this was private land, that he was trespassing just by being there. Mom, he called out, his voice carrying across the vines. Can we talk? I walked toward him slowly, stopping about 20 feet away. Close enough to hear him clearly, far enough to run if I needed to. What do you want, Hunter? I want to apologize. I want to try to make amends for what I did. You want to apologize for trying to murder me? I want to apologize for everything. For the money I stole, for the will I forged, for the people I hired to threaten you. For all of it. And you think an apology will change what you did? I think it's a start. I think it's the first step toward maybe, someday, being a family again. Hunter, we're not family. We haven't been family since the day you decided my life was worth less than your debts. I was desperate. I was scared. I made terrible choices. You made criminal choices. You made choices that nearly got me killed.
I know. And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for all of it. Hunter, let me ask you something. If those men had killed me, if your plan had worked, would you be sorry then? That's not what I wanted to happen. It's what you hired them to do. I hired them to scare you, to make you cooperate. And if I hadn't cooperated,
I
don't know. Yes, you do. You know exactly what would have happened. You would have gotten your inheritance, paid your debts, and moved on with your life. You would have been relieved that the problem was solved. That's not true. Hunter, you're still lying. Even now, even after everything that's happened, you're still lying to me. I'm not lying. I'm trying to be honest. Then be honest about this. Are you here because you're genuinely sorry, or are you here because you want something from me? I'm here because I missed you, because I realized in prison that I'd lost the most important person in my life. You lost me the day you tried to have me killed. Can't we try to rebuild what we had? Hunter, what we had was built on a lie. You pretended to love me while you were planning to murder me. You pretended to be my son while you were plotting to inherit my estate. You pretended to be family while you were treating me like an enemy.
I do love you, Mom.
I've always loved you. No, Hunter, you've always loved what I could give you. My money, my support, my unconditional forgiveness. You've never loved me. That's not true. Then prove it.
Leave.
Stay away from me. Let me live in peace without the constant threat of your presence. Mom, I'm not a threat to you anymore. Hunter, you're a man who tried to have his mother murdered for money. You'll always be a threat to me. I've changed. Have you? Or have you just learned to say the right words to get what you want? I've learned that family is more important than money.
Good.
Then you understand why I can't have you in my life. What do you mean? I mean that my family now consists of people who would never try to hurt me. People who love me for who I am, not for what I can give them. People who see me as a person to be protected, not a problem to be solved. I want to be that kind of family. Hunter, you had 35 years to be that kind of family. You chose to be a different kind of family. You chose to be the kind of family that murders each other for money. People can change. Maybe. But I can't take that risk. What if I prove it to you? What if I show you that I've changed? Hunter, the only way you can prove you've changed is by respecting my wishes and staying away from me. And if I can't do that, then you'll prove that you haven't changed at all. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing at the edge of the property. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see whether he was following me, whether he was angry, whether he was planning his next move. I just wanted to get back to the life I'd built without him. And here we are, beautiful souls, at the end of this incredible journey. If this story has moved you, if it's made you think about your own family relationships, if it's reminded you that you never have to accept abuse just because it comes from people who share your blood, then please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you are never too old, never too small, and never too powerless to demand the respect you deserve.